We're here to talk about the new leaflet redevelopment project aimed to connect the city. My name is Kelsey Foat. I'm a transportation planning and programming division. I'll be talking primarily about the street connection. And then Adrian.
Yep, so I work in community planning and I'm working with Kelsey on this project and I'm heading up the public space side of it as well.
Without further ado, a few things to cover today. We'll walk through a little bit what we've heard so far through engagement. We do have some recommendations to share with you tonight, so we're going to try to get to those quickly so there's lots of time for questions. We did introductions. You want to kick this one off?
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with the project, or just a quick summary to let you know what's going on, the city of Minneapolis now owns the 10 acres at the former Kmart site. We're planning to reconnect Nicollet Avenue through the site. And then with the rest of the land, it'll be a mixed use development, walkable, lots of different uses there. So these were the project goals that we worked, in the engagement in a variety of different phases, came up with the city and communities that we engaged with. These were the overall project goals. So reconnecting people, building transportation networks, building for who is here already, and designing safe and healthy communities, and having a place where you can not only shop, but also live and work and play here as well.
I'll just interject and say there's a lot of sub bullets under these goals on our website. So if you want to go and see what else other kind of sub goals are informing these, for instance, for the build safe, equitable, and sustainable transportation networks, there's things about pedestrian safety and connectivity, bike connectivity and safety, and then also transit speed and reliability.
What's the website?
It is New Nicollet Redevelopment. Yeah, Minneapolis, and then no, that's our email.
Yeah, that's the email. Honestly, the fastest way is if you go to the city's website and search for New Nicollet or just Kmart, it'll get there.
Yeah, we have a slide at the end too with a lot of those details right now.
Yeah,
Kmart will
we
get
knew
you there.
people would search that, so we made that work. So this is the overall project timeline. We did our first phase of engagement in 2022. We are now in the second phase of engagement. You see here, so this is where we're looking at the street, which is called the concept layout plan for New Nicollet, and then the public space framework, which will guide public space on the site in the future. So that started in summer, and there's three different parts of the phase, which you see at the bottom. Part one happened this last summer. Part two happened in fall, and then now we are here in part three, which is we have these recommended concepts that we're bringing back to folks and say, this is what we heard, and this is how they show up in the public space and the street, recommended layouts. Yeah.
Yes, so you guys are focusing on kind of the city run components from a redevelopment perspective. And so is that kind of running parallel with the future RSUs for the site, or is it focusing on the city health sector?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I mean, the city owns the whole site,
Right.
right? We're focusing on the public space
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
That becomes kind of the framework for the rest of the development part. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and the portion in green, the phase three is intended to focus on the development site. So there'll be more engagement, more talk and discussion around what that site looks like in the future. Just overall schedule, we are trying to get started on the roadway and the bridge for construction in 2025. So we're moving pretty quick to get that public infrastructure in place and really set the scene for development.
Check.
I don't believe so. Which street is it across from? First, no.
At the staffing building.
Yeah.
It's a little empty.
So our first phase, or our first part of engagement during this section, last summer was when we were asking folks, our first phase of engagement was really in general, what people want to see happen on the site, what are the goals, what are the priorities. And then this next phase asks folks, okay, when it comes to the street and the public space, this is what we heard in the very first engagement that we did. Help us prioritize what we heard. So we did a lot of different engagement events. We worked with a lot of the community partners in the area, including Rindell, and just had some really great conversations with people. Next slide. This is the engagement that happened last fall. We had the open house on the site, if you saw it. And attended. It was, I think we had over 500 people there. This is where we brought out the different design concepts. We had 3 different concepts for the public space and 4 different concepts for the street, and we asked folks to feedback on it. So let's talk about public space first, and then I'll hand it off to Kelsey for the street. In that first engagement, what we asked folks were a couple different questions, you know, helping us to prioritize what are the activities that you most want to do in public space on the site. What kind of amenities should be included? And then what kind of size spaces are you most interested in when it comes to having a gathering space? So when it came to activities, the top 3, I mean, there's a lot of interest in a lot of different activities, but the top 3 that came up were flexible space that could be used for a lot of different things, community gathering space just in general, and then gardens or community gardens. And then if you look at amenities on the bottom part, I mean, the top 3 are all about green space. Pollinator gardens, shade trees, open green space, lawn space. That's what we've been bringing throughout this engagement, is that green space is something that the communities nearby are really looking for on this. And from that initial engagement, when it came to public space, there were 9 themes that really came out of that feedback. And so these principles essentially helped us then generate the 3 concepts. So folks were interested in having flexible space for different uses, like reinforce the connection to the Greenway, having space for community gathering, bringing in green space. Safety was a big issue for a lot of folks. Having spaces for everyone, respecting equity, prioritizing health and wellness, having public art on the site, and then celebrating new Nicollet Ave as part of public space as well. And these were the 3 concepts that we brought to this neighborhood and other organizations back in the fall. So these were the 3 concepts for public space. The first one shows a linear park, essentially 2 linear parks at the north end of the site adjacent. And all these concepts include space for recreation, space for gathering, but this is just different ways of laying out that space within the site. Concept B looked at having a linear park space along Nicollet Avenue to kind of celebrate the street. And then concept C has more of a kind of traditional park-shaped park up in the northeast quadrant, and then a diagonal pedestrian and bikeway would be the site. And so we went around to a lot of folks again and said, okay, so tell us what you think of these sites or these concepts. We did blind voting at larger events, but also just had a lot of discussions with smaller groups of people. And we asked folks, you know, can you rate the concept 1 to 5 stars? And as you can see, they all had very, very high voting. I mean, people were very excited to have the site in general. Different groups favored different elements more than others, but ultimately, concept C was kind of the one that people were most excited about, most interested in. It had the least kind of cons when it came to the different elements that were favored or less. So with this concept C, there's a few, you know, these are the more general strategies that we're going to put in place when it comes to public space on the site. This is based on that feedback and what people really liked about that concept. So what you have is a park, yep, in that quadrant, a larger park, community park. We have a connection through the site for peds and bikes, connecting Lake and Blaisdell intersection up to where the ramp may be relocated at First and the Greenway. And Kelsey can talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. Just having public spaces that are flexible for a lot of different activities, having green space or a lot of trees and gardens, and then the bottom middle one is about finding additional opportunities for smaller gathering spaces throughout the site, especially in locations that support businesses. And then the last one is on either end of the street with architecture and public art, creating kind of welcoming entries into the site. And so this is the recommended public space concept that we are bringing forward right now. The idea is that, you know, as people really liked this diagonal space, the thing is, it could be a little challenging potentially for developers who want to develop in that southwest corner. There's a lot of need for access, and, some of the more practical everyday needs that development has, trash removal, that sort of thing. So we recognize it could be a little challenging, so we wanted to add a little bit of flexibility. So the park will definitely be in that location. We will definitely have bikes and peds moving through the site in kind of this general diagonal. But exactly how that happens will be left up to developers and within certain criteria. So the bottom right also shows a different orientation of that space. And that will allow them to be, just make sure that the development is successful too. Also, as part of this concept, we have a mid-block crossing, so there will be a crosswalk where you see the number 3 to allow bikes and peds to move through. And then also we see number 4, the park board, who we have been working with closely on this project. They would like to, or they're very interested in owning and managing the park space on the site. They've been looking for park space in this area, and so it works out very well. They're also, we've heard from a lot of folks that indoor recreation and movement space is very. So they're looking at doing this kind of new way of doing indoor recreation space, which they're calling storefront space. So it wouldn't be a rec center like this building. It would be potentially space in the new mixed use building, maybe on the ground floor. So they could rent that space and it could be used for a lot of activities. So it's something they're exploring, something we're talking about. Yeah, I think that covers everything.
That's the last of the public space.
Okay.
I don't know if we want to pause for a minute.
Oh, yes.
Have you gotten any more progress with the county on connecting the site like to the Greenway directly?
I know, we would love to make that happen. I think as long as they have transit planned for the trench, it's not gonna happen. Certainly, we have conversations with them about, what are their plans in the future, and if things change, then certainly.
Have you got the contact?
Oh,
Mary Green is the commissioner that represents this area for the county. Joe Gladkey has been our staff contact, who is the kind of, it's the Hennepin County Railroad Authority that controls that land. So that's something that I'm sure he would be interested in hearing.
Yeah, I think it's such a challenge because like the Greenway is such a phenomenal asset to our area, but it often gets underappreciated result, and you see that with a lot of developments that gone up. They turn their back to it because somebody else is, and that what that creates is an opportunity with bad actors that we get over, particularly that darker, especially if it's just where it starts more than it is light. It becomes not a very safe from place to be. So the more that would be my comment, particularly is to have an opportunity to put in green space, basically buying it, that there's an opportunity to create some better dynamic engagement. And maybe it isn't then, the relationship with Hennepin County doesn't develop in such a way that recognition that way. Maybe it's just the thoughtful design on that edge of the park that kind of provides that visual connection, and just encouraging people to be on that ledge. Just the eyes on the street aspect, I think would really encourage some more amenable circumstances for folks.
Seem like to think that since this is good, the county does put transit down there, whenever they do it. You think Nicollet would be a big station stop?
Yeah,
that's correct.
So if there's anything you could do to not preclude a more direct connection to the south side of the Greenway, that'd be good, like running 29 through there, unless it's just like a runner or some kind of other low traffic. It's a pet bike route that separates the park and the building from the Greenway itself, so that people can access the transit from there and when they can all stuff down.
I do have 2 more quick points that I like to, so the green crescent along 35W is just a block over, so it'd be really great if there was also a better way to access that on bikes, because it's sort of when you come out of it, you're spit out on the lake and 35W, and there's like no connection to the neighborhood. So connecting this site along Lake Street, I know one of the original proposals had a bikeway running along Lake Street, so connecting that to the Green Crescent would be fantastic. I really struggle accessing it, but I use it all the time because it's a lot better than the zigzag of using either the proposed one or the current Nicollet one, which spits you out going west and then you need to go east. So it's sort of just a whole, I
Right.
don't know, just would streamline that. So that
Yeah, I can
And
say just quickly that we did look at extending to the Green Crescent. There's a building that was built fairly recently right there against the back of the sidewalks. There's not a lot of, without major roadway changes, which that road was rebuilt 2
Yeah.
years ago. It's very difficult to make that connection.
But there is like a big center lane that's nothing at that stretch, so I think they could.
Yeah, which is a MnDOT and county interaction there. So there's a lot of players. We've definitely heard that before and we can carry it forward still, but just to note the reality that there's a building there and there's a lot of
Okay,
complexities.
well,
That's
then
why- oh,
planning for it, at least having a bikeway on the bottom along Lake Street would be just a start for future action.
Yeah, I think, so Kelsey will get into a little bit more about moving that ramp, which currently connects at Nicollet, one block to the east to connect up First Avenue and
That's
the future
next slide.
bikeway. Oh, there you go.
It is. ahead.
So I think what's great about that is then you do have the connection directly from the ramp to this two-way bikeway, which will get you to Lake Street. But yeah, again, then once you get to Lake Street. Yeah.
And it used to be that it's where I made like the possibly not parking lot and it's really used to press down.
Love it.
Well, now, you don't need to.
So my other point was more about public spaces and just how to activate those and make sure they're used. You don't need to look further than out this window at the corner here. We got a new skate park that is in constant use, constant. I mean, no other part of the park system in like within a mile of here gets as much use as that skate park. So a lot of other cities are doing this. I haven't seen it really done in Minneapolis, but incorporating not a skate park, but like skatable fixtures in public spaces, like a bench that you can grind on, or like a little corner of a plaza where skaters can kind of hang out and skate. I think that would really like keep a lot of eyes on the street, a lot of presence there. So
Yeah, it's such a good point. So it goes back to like, parks, they need to have multiple. systems of them. Dozens of this idea, right? That's how we stay active. And parks that are empty feel unsafe, so like, yeah, I think that's such a good, thinking about that, and then it's wild how much people use that skate park. It's phenomenal. It's great to see. But
Yeah, so we're working closely with the park board staff on making this park happen. And they will be doing their own design process when it comes to the actual design of the park itself. However, they've been engaged throughout this whole process and know that what we are hearing during engagement, and we'll be using the document that comes out of this as a starting point when they do their own detailed design process.
what's the step?
Colleen Odell.
Awesome. We can certainly answer more questions on that, but want to keep us moving here a bit. So the ramp connection that we were just talking about. So today there's a ramp connection to the Midtown Greenway off of Nicollet, goes from Nicollet to the west. That ramp today is not ADA compliant. It also creates a pinch point in the trail. So on the left, you can kind of see it's only 13 feet of space between the wall of the ramp and the edge of the Greenway trail, which isn't a lot for people walking and biking in the area. It gets a lot of traffic in this area. So it's certainly something that we want to address and something that we brought to the community in the last round of engagement to see if this was a big issue for people. And they said, yeah, let's fix that. Kind of a no brainer. So the solution that we came up with for fixing that was actually moving the ramp to First Avenue. So we should be shifting it a block to the east. We have more space in that section between First and Nicollet than we do between Nicollet and Blaisdell. So it allows us to put in that ramp without tightening that trail up. So we're able to get that trail width that we want to see. We're able to get that ADA compliant ramp coming down. And also it connects into First Avenue, which First Avenue, people are aware, is getting rebuilt starting this year. It will have a new two-way bikeway on the west side of the street. So that bike connection from the Midtown Greenway. Will connect directly into that First Avenue two-way, protected sidewalk level bikeway. It'll be a great connection for people using that and going north and south, especially on First Avenue. So that's part of the puzzle here is putting that in.
The First Avenue reconstruction, do you know what the timeline is?
So they're breaking their project out over 2 years. They're starting at 27th and they'll be working their way south. So they're hoping to get to Lake Street by the end of this year, and then we'll start again in 2025 to the north.
How far out to the north? 27 to Franklin?
It goes to Franklin. Yeah, I don't know if they're working Franklin South or what the other schedule is. We've been more concerned with
They're not going from Franklin into downtown.
the eventual project goes to Grant. I'm not entirely sure what their schedule is past this area, though. Yeah, so that'll be coming soon. You all will see that here shortly as springtime comes. Just to kind of touch base on where we've been with the street concept, Adrian talked about the last round of engagement that we had, that we brought out concepts both for the public space concepts and then also the street concepts. We brought out 4 to the community for feedback from the street concepts. They're very hard to see on the screen, but design concept 1 to the top left is kind of a street that's open to all types of vehicles, has very wide green spaces, wide pedestrian spaces. We heard throughout engagement, to Adrian's point, that greening was a top priority for people. They wanted to see trees, boulevards, really soften up the space quite a bit. We heard over and over and over the importance of pedestrian facilities, making sure that's a welcoming place for people to walk. And then we heard a mix of input on bikes and vehicles and buses and things like that. So we put together design concept 1, we put together design concept 2, which is similar to 1. It's open to all types of vehicles, again, wide pedestrian spaces, a little less wide green spaces, because with this one, we added in a center median. And that's a traffic calming device to help people slow down as they're operating their vehicles through the corridor. Had the same approach for concept 3, has a median with that, but we removed parking in that concept to allow for more green space. Wanted to see what people thought about kind of that shift. And then design concept 4 was a street that was open only to transit and emergency vehicles. So again, transit emergency vehicles has lots of green space and lots of pedestrian space. So those were the 4 that we were looking for feedback on. And what we heard overall is 2 and 3, the ones with the median, weren't really well liked. People didn't like the trade-off and either losing the parking or losing green space. That makes perfect sense given what we heard in the early parts of engagement about the importance of greening. Concepts 1 and 4 were really where people divided themselves. Some people really liked concept 1 that was open to all vehicles. Some people liked concept 4 that was open to transit only. So that was really the main divide we were seeing, and where we spent a lot of our time over the last few months kind of analyzing the 2 options and kind of rolling them out and saying, which one's going to work in reality when we actually put it out on the street. So one piece of our analysis as we were looking into these things is trying to understand what's all happening in this part of the neck of the woods, I guess, part of this area. There's a lot of changes that have happened. There's a lot of changes that are coming, which is very exciting. Recently, we've seen the new Whittier-Lyndale Bikeway on Blaisdell, so there's a 2-way bikeway there. We've seen the new exit ramp from 35W that comes onto Lake Street. That's changed traffic patterns in the area quite a bit. We've seen Vision Zero safety improvements on 31st, on Nicollet Avenue, on either side of the site. We've seen a number of new developments or establishments come online. Carmel Mall expansion has happened the last couple of years. Eat Street Crossing, just north of the site, is bringing a lot more activity to that area. We're seeing another couple of residential units or residential buildings popping up over the next couple of years, starting this year with the Wells Fargo site at 3030 Nicollet. That's expected to break ground this spring, or this year, I should say. And that will bring 110 new family-oriented units. So a lot of people coming in and out of those, and also kind of reestablish that Wells Fargo bank there. So we expect to see a lot of circulation coming in and out of that site. Another new thing that's coming this year that we're very excited about, besides First Avenue that we just talked about, is the changes coming to Lake Street. So with the B line bus rapid transit line converting the existing Route 21 to a BRT route, there will be some supporting changes to Lake Street that'll help keep that bus moving quickly through the corridor. Some of those include things like stations. Some of those include things like converting existing travel lanes on Lake Street into transit-only lanes. So in front of the Kmart, 2 of the existing travel lanes will be converted into transit-only lanes to keep that bus moving efficiently and smoothly through this area.
That's exciting. It's great for that network. It's great for our project goals, but we just have to be cognizant that that does change the way that Lake Street will operate into the future. One thing that we've been looking at very closely is bike and ped connectivity in this area. So First Avenue is shown on the bottom of the screen. North is to our right here. Again, that is being built out this year. It'll have a new two-way bikeway on the west side. That new ramp connection for the Midtown Greenway. My cursor will not show up in the screen, but will be coming into First Avenue. So we expect to see a lot more people walking and biking, in particular along First Avenue, which is great. That's what we want to see. Lots of activity, kind of bringing eyes to that street, really bringing some liveliness there. If we look at concept 1, which is where the street for Nicollet Avenue is open to all vehicles versus concept 4, there's some pretty major differences as we think about connections around the site for people walking and biking. For concept 4, where the street is closed to general purpose traffic and trucks, all those vehicles have to continue to route around the site. And so what we're seeing is where you can see that red arrow is that's a major conflict point where we would see people driving, crossing across that two-way bikeway on the west side. So it's something that we generally try to avoid. Here, Nicollet Avenue is a truck corridor. It serves a lot of restaurants, and East Street serves a lot of restaurants south of here. There's a lot of commercial activity coming around. So we expect to see pretty large trucks making that turning movement as well. So we've designed for that. So with concept 4, what we get essentially is a longer crossing for that bike and ped crossing at Cecil Newman and First. We get more vehicles crossing across those paths of people walking and biking as they're coming up from the Greenway. So it creates this situation that we don't really like to see. So that's one thing that I think is not helping with our analysis of concept 4 versus concept 1, where if we have those vehicles on Nicollet, we're not seeing that same conflict point.
So you don't want to open up Nicollet to close it.
Fair. Some people have had that opinion as well. So another piece of our analysis is understanding how traffic will move in the area. One of our key goals, again, is about transit speed and reliability as it comes through the area. With those changes that we described just a minute ago, with the B line coming, with other changes coming in this area, kind of intensifying the number of people in this area in general, we've put together a traffic analysis to try to understand that and look at some numbers. In that traffic analysis, we used 2023 traffic data. So we counted cars, vehicles last year. We used those counts and said, look, we have citywide mode shift goals to reduce trips across the city. So let's see how that pans out if we apply that here. So we reduced the number of trips in this area per that goal. We assume that there would be additional trips coming to this area because of the new development, right? There's going to be people living here. There's going to be shops. We're going to see more people coming. We assume that a third of those would come by vehicle and 2/3 of those will come by walking, biking, or transit. That again fits with our city goals, our city policies. Applied those numbers and looked at concept 1 and then looked at concept 4. In concept 4, where we run into hiccups is even though we have a stretch of transit-only street, the new Nicollet Avenue, the bus has a really hard time getting to that street. It gets jammed up in traffic trying to get around the block to get around the site and get back around. So we see delay actually for transit as it gets to the site, where overall travel times for transit get worse with concept 4 compared to concept 1, which is not something that, again, we want to see. If you open it up to everyone, traffic has a way to disperse. It moves a little bit quicker through there in terms of not holding up transit coming to the site and getting through the site.
But back to making it is like wide enough for the buses too, but in Nicollet and 31st, the buses can't even turn there without one was on the college. Or like if the cars aren't where they're supposed to be, or they almost full of now they do a car and then the backup car is trying to take things through.
That's another beauty, I guess, of concept 1 is that most traffic that's on Nicollet can stay straight. There's not as many turns, including buses. So.
So was there, in terms of concept 4, I mean, was there any thought about how you would just keep, what would need to be done to limit it traffic, the transit only traffic? How would you keep other people? This folks.
Yeah. It's certainly something we had a lot of discussion on. You know, there's limited things that we can do. We talked with Metro Transit about putting in gates. Is that a thing that we want to be looking at? A gate that would raise up for transit? They said no. They said they have those in other places and they you know, they fail sometimes. They don't open, they get stuck with snow or debris or whatever else. It doesn't help them in meeting their own transit speed and reliability goals because it just gets jammed up. So other than that, we're looking at signage, we're looking at design to be able to do those things. It is only a block, right? And so if there are those misanthropes, like you said, that just want to zoom through, who's going to catch them by the time they're, you know? So that is also a concern with concept 4. You know, it doesn't play as deeply into the analysis because we think we could design a street that supports that, but or supports the correct behavior that you should be doing. But yes, that's certainly a consideration. Another key piece of the puzzle is understanding kind of trip lengths. As a city, we're trying to reduce VMT or vehicle miles traveled so that we can reduce greenhouse gases. That's a big climate-oriented goal of ours. We're looking at really a micro scale here since we're looking at just one site. But if you think about the way the traffic orients itself around the site today, First Avenue is a one-way, Cecil Newman is a one-way, 29th Street is a one-way, and Blaisdell is a one-way. So everything except Lake Street circulates around the site in a clockwise direction. So if you're trying to access a future, let's say there's a future access point off of Blaisdell and you're coming from the south, you have to go to Lake in concept 4, you would have to go to Lake, make a turn, go up Blaisdell, make a turn on the 29th or Cecil, go to 29th and come down to Blaisdell. So it adds, you know, this big loop just to get around to that access point. And it's the same in the opposite direction. If you're trying to get around to First from the north, you have to loop around the site again. Again, that's not helping us with our VMT reduction goals. That's not helping us with reducing that delay on transit and jamming up the rest of the system, the B line along Lake Street, the 18 along Nicollet. So we're seeing more conflicts between people walking, biking. We're seeing a lot more trips that just are longer and not as efficient if we're looking at concept 4 versus concept 1. So those are key pieces of our analysis. Overall, what we're recommending is concept 1, which open up the street to all types of vehicles. Again, we have really wide green space plan with that, really wide spaces for pedestrians, future space that could be used for street cafes or sidewalk cafes. Another key feature of this is providing some parking along the block. And we are looking at new regulations or new guidance coming from the federal government about accessibility in parking spaces, especially in commercial areas. So what we have proposed is actually parking spaces that are a bit wider in certain areas for ADA compliant parking spots where someone could deploy a ramp, roll out in their wheelchair without having to go into the street. They can stay in their parking spot and not have to deal with potential traffic issues and be able to get to the street or a sidewalk in a safe manner. And so how we're proposing to do that is actually having those parking spaces at sidewalk height, similar to what we have in front of City Hall or downtown in front of Public Service Building, if anyone has seen those. So it's kind of a new design that we're playing with. We think it'll work really well for meeting that accessibility goal. So overall, what our layout looks like, so as we're looking at the aerial view, to the right is north. So the area that you see a lot of the red, that's the intersection at Lake and Nicollet. Those red marks are transit advantage lanes. They're transit bus only lanes. And the reason for all those being there is to really help transit get through those intersections at Lake and Nicollet. That's where we're seeing a lot of the slowdowns. For the Nicollet portion, there'd be a new transit lane added in the northbound direction, again, because we were seeing that was the biggest issue in our traffic analysis. That transit bus would be able to get up to the light, get through that light as quickly as possible, and get to a new station or new stop at the southeast corner of the site where you can see the red T. They could pick up and drop off passengers. And then they would merge back into a general purpose traffic lane. And the reason for doing that is that by the time you can kind of see in the middle where that blue line is and that mid-block crossing that corresponds with the public space framework, we don't want to have 2 lanes of traffic in the same direction. That makes it really hard for people who are trying to cross. They cross 1 lane of traffic. They may not be able to see the next line of cars coming, whether they're going to stop. And so it creates what we call a double threat scenario. So we're really being intentional about only having people cross 1 lane of traffic in either direction. That mid-block crossing would also have an RFB, similar to what's on Lyndale today at 25th and 27th. So that would create a really nice place for people to cross. There'll be a median there to help with some traffic calming. And people will be able to get across and connect to that public space area. Generally, other than that, the road is a 1 lane of traffic in either direction. as you get up to Cecil Newman and 29th, we've made some adjustments to the intersection. There's some really weird geometry out there today. There's some weird yielding, there's a lot of bollards. So we're looking to clean that up, really create some nice green bump out areas that shorten those crossings for pedestrians, but that make more sense for people driving in the area as well.
On that, I'm glad you're pointing that out because I have found it extremely dangerous, especially with street crossings going in. I go there and walk there and it's very disorienting and dangerous walking because it's, you know, offset.
Yeah.
Has there been any exploration into just closing down Cecil Newman and fully pedestrianizing it, especially if you're adding or allowing private vehicles to go on Nicollet, you're relieving the need for cars to be there and have this enhanced, you know, the ped and bike friendly space. Just a thought, I don't know.
Yeah. It's something we discussed actually. Where we ran into issues is there's 2 alley entrances and a couple business entrances to there. So to provide access to those, you either have a cul-de-sac or you have some kind of limited access kind of way for them to get out. We don't like to dead end alleys because it makes it very difficult for trash cleaning, for snow removal, those kinds of things. It's not that it can't be done, it's just a design issue that we have to get around. And by the time we started to look into that, it was taking up so much space that it made sense to allow the circulation to continue around the site, especially in that scenario where, you know, First Avenue, let's say there's something happening with Nicollet and someone wants to get around the site, especially an emergency vehicle, they have another way to do it.
The northeast corner there, just off the park there, but on First Avenue.
Yep.
What is that? It's a picture. Okay. That picture.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
a
that-
bridge
That's the,
Yep.
that's the bridge over, oh, okay.
over the Midtown Greenway. Yep.
It looked like it was a bridge over First Avenue.
Oh, yeah, no, just over the Greenway. Yep.
So I was hoping for concept 4. I didn't want to like add cars to Nicollet, especially with Eat Street. I think they'll change the character a bit. But anyways, with that said, like that kind of reduces the need for Blaisdell and First to have this like car sewer vibe where it's like multiple lanes of traffic just rushing through. I'm sure it's too late now, but it sure would be nice if like First could be both First and Blaisdell could just be tighten down to 1 lane and calm down a bit, maybe even turn back into 2-way. Do they really need to be like 3-way alternatives at this point, or can those become neighborhood streets?
Yeah, good question. So one thing we're counting on with this Nicollet Avenue project is it's not gonna attract traffic off of First and Blaisdell. First and Blaisdell is 1-ways, operate really well for vehicles. And we expect that people will continue to use those to get through the neighborhood. We want people to use Nicollet to get to businesses, to get to their houses. You know, we don't want them to zoom up and down Nicollet. So having those places on First and Blaisdell allows that to continue to happen. I think there's also with First Avenue, for some context there is a large the Nico plating facility there that do work with very large trucks. And so we would need the 2 lanes there really allows those trucks to be able to use that space to get to that business. If that business shuts down, maybe there's a different conversation to be had.
Why don't you just eliminate all businesses in the city and then move the jobs into the suburbs and set nest?
Sounds like a deal.
But in reality, what, you know, you mentioned work. And nickel plating is a work site where people can get jobs and get some advancement. What other work type of initiatives are being considered for this area to encourage people who actually live here to be able to work close to where they're living?
Yeah, so the next phase of this project will be looking at the development sites, doing some market studies and other, I'm not a real estate person, so I don't know, but, yeah, the end product would be, development guidelines for future RFPs. We don't know what ownership will be on the site yet.
Right.
We don't know a lot of that, but that's what we'll be figuring out next year. So
Is who on your team would be leading that? It's.
yeah, Rebecca Farrell in business.
Oh, great.
Yep,
Yeah.
so
And she'll come and talk to us about.
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, she was actually gonna come tonight, but she was sick, so.
yeah, so there will be, sorry, go ahead.
It's very useful when I moved here, like 37 place now. Every block like we did, literally in, there was Kmart, there was a pilot. Lights was years and they hardly ever. But now we have,
Yeah,
and so they're going back.
that's definitely what we've been hearing folks wanting wanting a grocery store, wanting to get their daily needs met in this area. And so that's something that we can do through that RFP process, have certain requirements or certain incentives or what have you, when it comes to that development. And certainly with business, certainly with businesses as well.
So it'd be nice to,
Yeah.
and just encourage him. Encourage her, it'd be nice to see what speak about it.
So we got 5 minutes left. Did you have any more points?
No, that was the end. Other than this, we're just saying what's next is that, the phase 3 work, which is going to focus on development, will start next. There'll be more conversations around that. We are hoping to bring forward these recommended concepts to the city council and the mayor in April or May. So we're queuing up to do that. And then that website information, if anyone wants to jot it down, is up on the screen. So,
We'll
sorry
have,
for the
we'll
miss-
have these posted.
The search for Kmart, that's the Minneapolis. Is that what you were talking?
Yeah.
Cool, great.
Option development 1 or whatever, that's the one that's going forward.
For the street?
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah,
Not 4.
that's what we're proposing. Yep.
When do you expect it to be starting next year? And
It's a really good question. Right now, process-wise, we are working through the historic review process for the bridge.
sure.
The trench itself is a national historic place. And so that's taking some time.
Yep.
We're hoping that it will be a quick and easy construction period, but the bridge is really going to dictate that.
Right, that section.
Yeah,
Well done,
exactly,
well done.
exactly.
Well done, like you guys.
Yep.
We rebuilt several bridges, so it's.
Yes, right, which I'm kind of less about, so.
Keep using it, that's for sure.
Let me just remind folks that if you think of something or have additional questions, there is an open house with this information tomorrow night up on Lake Street, about the store that says. And if Rebecca's well.
I would expect Rebecca would be there. Yeah,
So-
yep.
What do you do with the inevitable push from organizations like Open Street? So sending an email like an hour and a half ago and saying, and telling you that doing anything but for ridiculous, and probably already got 375 emails.
My inbox is very full right now.
So how do you handle that? I mean, Phil's saying he doesn't want it to be opened, but I'm also a biker and I do want it to be open. So I mean, how do you kind of manage all these opinions? It sounds like you do have something and you've thought through all the safety. If there's a huge. Storm of opinions.
So you can have it open.
Sure.
Access by trucks.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons.
Well, absolutely, we're here to listen, right?
Sure.
We're taking feedback now, and we're gonna get lots from both sides. I mean, if you're supportive of it, I would encourage you to reach out to your council member, reach out to staff, let us know what you think. That only helps us kind of create, support internally and kind of push those through. I would say that, on the council member side, we've gotten great support from the elected officials on what we're proposing. And so, they will continue to listen to constituents. They may, take feedback. We'll look to refine things if needed, but I think we just need to listen and then we'll bring something forward.
One other
Respect people's time. Do you have any questions? I think you guys may have 2 more
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Talk with them directly and another adjourn. Meeting, again, this will be recorded, this has been recorded, and we'll have transcripts available online, and playing some time to talk.
Thanks again for.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation. I wanted to say that something I've seen on these plans has never